Welcome everyone back to the Hoops Deep Dive show. Today we're going to go over the 5 free agency signings that have happened over the past 3 days. It's absolutely slowed up. There's so many big names still on the board, but there's no traction on them. Doesn't look like there's homes for them. So we're going to go over the 5 signings that have happened. We're going to go over the free agents that are still unsigned and why they're not signed yet, because they're really big names and you'd think they'd be off the board already. And then we're going to go over our Instagram Q&A. Thank you for everyone that sent me questions. We got 8 questions, which was a great result. I thought we might get 2 or 3. So thanks to everyone who's supporting this show. Let's go straight into it. So the first of the signings is TJ Warren has gone to the Nets. It's not a really massive deal. He's become very, very overrated. He was a not bad wing scorer. He's not great on the defensive end, but he's been out for 2 years. So I see him on a similar trajectory. Might not have said that word right, but similar path to Victor Oladipo, in the fact that he's going to come back. I don't think he'll be the same player, and he'll have to find a new sort of role in the league. But for the Nets, I do like it better than Patty Mills. Don't get me wrong. So yeah, not bad. Robin Lopez to the Cavs. It's all right. A bit of big man depth. He shouldn't play, but he is a good locker room guy apparently. So don't hate it for the Cavs. Thomas Bryant to the Lakers. Yeah, Lakers fans, he's not very good. I know he shoots 40% from 3, but he's a 6'8" center. He's not great defensively. I think Rob Pelinka's really missed the boat here. We'll get onto him much later in the Q&A, but he's gone way too young. I know everyone said we need to get younger, but we need to get people in their prime, that 25 to 30 bracket. And he's gone, all right, well, how about we get a bunch of 22 to 25-year-olds who are unproven and haven't yet cemented a role in the league. Like, terrible, terrible offseason for him so far. He's lost the offseason. He's the worst. The Lakers have had the worst offseason so far. But we'll get into that later. Serge Ibaka back to the Bucks. He was really disappointing for them last year. Traded DiVincenzo for him at the deadline. Wasn't able to really be healthy. Looks like he's past it. But I don't hate them taking a shot on him. And Gorgie Dang to the Spurs. Bit of a weird one because he's a veteran and they look like they're going in full tank mode. But could open the door for a Jakob Poeltl trade. Rumours about Boston potentially absorbing him into their trade exception. Or, yeah, Boston's really the spot for Poeltl. But we'll wait and see. But yeah, Gorgie Dang to the Spurs. Bit of a surprise one. But don't hate it. And that's all the signings we have. It's been super, super quiet ever since the KD trade request. It sort of sent shockwaves through every team. Plans have been disrupted. But there's a lot of guys who are still available. So we'll get on to part 2 of the show. Who are the free agents that are still unsigned and why are they still unsigned? So the first one up is DeAndre Ayton. This was a shocker to me. We saw Detroit clear up max cap space. We saw Indiana be a rumoured team. And if he was going to get a max contract offer by now, it would have happened. It's been a real surprise to me. There doesn't appear to be a massive, massive market for him. The only other rumoured spot is a sign and trade for Kevin Durant. But by all reports, the Suns don't have enough to satisfy the Nets for KD. So he's in real trouble, Aiden. I think he goes back to Phoenix on the qualifying offer. I don't see a spot for him unless he signs a much lower deal than the max, which he wasn't willing to do a year ago. So it's been a real shame because I think he is a really, really good young player. But some of the reasons I think teams might be hesitant to give him the max is his lack of work ethic. By all reports, Devin Booker has to push him every single day. He's had headlines before of, I just want to make it to my rookie max and then I'm going to stop caring about the league. So, yeah, I can see why teams would be a bit hesitant. I'm still surprised Detroit hasn't got him yet. And we'll get on to DeAndre Ayton's possible destinations later on in the Q&A, but I am very surprised he hasn't found a max contract spot yet. Colin Sexton, no market for him. He missed all of last year. Oh, not all of last year, but a large chunk of last year with knee injury. There isn't a market for him. There isn't a clear fit. I think he goes back to Cleveland on the qualifying offer. I don't really love him in Cleveland. I think it showed last year. Once he went out, Darius Garland went crazy. And I think Ricky Rubio, honestly, I'd rather play Ricky Rubio over Sexton in that Cleveland system. I think Ricky Rubio was awesome for them last year before he did his ACL. But Sexton, it is a bit disappointing that he didn't get a chance to show off his talent last year because of the knee injury, but there just isn't a fit for him. So I think he, along with Aiden, both go back to their original teams on the qualifying offer. Dennis Schroeder, I didn't talk about him the other day in my who's still available list. He is a really, really good player. Unfortunately, it's just his ego. Sometimes as NBA fans, we forget that these guys are people. They have personalities, and front offices are trying to fit personalities together. On the 2021 Lakers, that was the big, big issue. He wasn't willing to take a back seat. He wanted to be a star, earn his max contract, which obviously didn't happen. But he is a really, really good talent. He was second in Sixth Man of the Year for a reason. He is elite defensively. He's one of the better perimeter defenders. Well, not one of the better, but maybe top 10. He's really, really good on the perimeter. But with his ego, I don't see a spot for him. We saw Boston get better once they traded him. And he can't really shoot the three ball, so he's too good not to be in the league. There was a reason the Lakers offered him $21 million a year, which he would not be worth, but I'm surprised he hasn't gone for the mid-level. But he'll find a spot on the minimum contract somewhere. There's no doubt about it. Jeremy Lamb, very, very overrated player, but feel like I should mention him. He came back from the catastrophic knee and leg injury, and shout out to him for fighting back, but he shot under 40% from the field last year. Wasn't great defensively. I don't know if he finds a spot in the league, to be honest, but feel like I should mention him. And then we got two categories of people here who are left in free agency. So I've gone with the 3-and-D players, one of them's not a 3-and-D player, but a role player. So we got Caleb Martin. I'd like to see him on the Lakers, to be honest. I think, considering the rest of our signings, he'd be a really, really good fit for us on the wing. Jarrett Culver, yeah, he'll find a spot, don't get me wrong, but I don't think he's great. Detroit seems to be signing all the high draft picks who haven't turned out, so I think he ends up in Detroit. And then this guy, obviously not 3-and-D, but Alfred Payton from the Phoenix Suns. Is he out the league? Maybe. He's had a really solid career of just being a role player, but his time might be up. Then we get into the young free agents who are still available, and there's some really interesting names on this list. Eric Pascal, he was really good for the Warriors, putting up empty stats a couple years ago, But in Utah, he was pretty shocking. He's a bit of an in-betweener, between the 4 and the 5. Again, Detroit, Lakers, I think he finds a spot in the league, but I'm not sure how long he'll be in the league for. Kessler Edwards from Brooklyn. He needs to find a spot. He was really solid for them last year. Lakers, if you want to sign a young guy, this was a guy who showed great potential last year as a 3-and-D player. And, I'm not endorsing him as this massive game-changing signing, but compared to Lonnie Walker, Troy Brown Jr., I'd take Kessler Edwards over the both of them. So he could be good. U2 wannabe, most famous for Ant absolutely posterizing him. He might be out the league, but he is a solid young player. And then the guy I'm most excited to talk about, Jordan Nwora, he does have potential to be a really, really solid scorer in this league. He's never really got the opportunity on the Bucks, but he was awesome in the Olympics a couple of years ago for Nigeria. Every time I watch him, he looks like a bucket, but he doesn't get great opportunity on the Bucks. A potential spot for him, there isn't any clear ones, but the Lakers, again, we've had such a bad offseason. I'd much rather us sign him to the minimum than some of these other teams. Potentially Philly, if he could come off the bench, be a bit of a spark plug, replace Shake Milton in that role, I wouldn't mind it, but he could potentially be out of the league, which would be so wrong because he is such a great young talent, such a great young scorer. He should really be in the league, but we'll have to wait and see because 6 days into free agency, some of these guys, the restricted free agents mainly, the fact that they haven't got any offer sheets yet isn't exactly a very good sign. So, Nwora could go back to the Bucks on the qualifying, but we'll have to wait and see. So thank you to everyone that sent questions over on Instagram. This is one of the most exciting things I've done with this network so far is being able to have these DMs and these questions from you guys, and we can communicate with each other and talk about basketball is something that really excites me. So without further ado, we'll get on to the first question. It's from Rowan Gupta, who says, which free agent do you think will have the biggest impact next season? And I've broken this down into 2 categories. So as far as biggest impact, as far as just biggest statistics, I think Jalen Brunson will put up the biggest statistics out of all the free agents that have signed this year. I think, he could put up 20-5 or 20-6. But then I've put value, who can help a team become a champion next year. And I think PJ Tucker is the first one for me. The last 2 years of that 3-year deal at ages 39 and 40 could be really ugly. But as far as next season, name a more perfect fit next to Joel Embiid. He can shoot the three, elite defensively. If he doesn't decline, it could be a game changer for Philly. And then the second one, who I would have had at number one, but after the Rudy Gobert trade, it's not as crucial, is Kyle Anderson. He's a great four. Obviously, he's not an explosive athlete or anything, but he's just so smart. He makes the correct play. Now that Gobert's there, they still have McDaniels. Where does he sort of fit in? Does he have to get moved up to the three? I don't love Minnesota's position right now, but those are the two signings for me that I think could really change the championship landscape next season. Next up, Rowan Gupta's sent another question. Thank you, Rowan. These are two very good questions. He asks, who do you think has won free agency so far? And it's been a bit of a weird free agency. I don't see any clear winners. I see a lot of losers, to be honest. I see a lot of bad contracts, overrated signings from teams. If I had to pick a team, it'd probably be the Clippers. They got John Wall. They re-signed Amir Coffey. They extended Zubac, and they were able to retain Nick Batum. So if I had to pick a team, it'd be them, to be honest. But even them, they've lost Isaiah Hartenstein, who I think is a really, really underrated player. So there hasn't been any clear winner yet. There's still so many names on the board. Ayton, Sexton. We'll see what happens with Bridges. I'm not sure he'll be in the NBA. But yeah, I don't see any clear winners. I see a lot of losers, which we'll get onto later. But the Lakers, the Knicks potentially. So I see a lot of losers, but as far as winners, Rowan, I don't see many winners so far, but if I had to pick a team, I'd go with the Clippers. Next up, we have a question from Tyler T.S., who asked, do you think the Gobert trade was a good trade for the T-Wolves? And I said in my video the other day, I needed time to think about it, how would it work for next season, the Twin Towers. And I think it could work next season. They could be a really good regular season, but overall, I think it was a super bad trade for Gobert. Firstly, they gave up 4 unprotected future first-round picks, plus Walker Kessler, who was pick 22 this year, for Rudy Gobert, which is basically 5 first-round picks. So, firstly, 5 first-round picks for Rudy Gobert, way too much. Here's his contract for the next 4 years. $38 million, $41 million, $43 million, and at 34 years old for Rudy Gobert, you're going to pay $46 million. That is going to be the worst contract in the NBA. That is going to be one of the worst contracts of all time. I think the worst contract of all time. Look, Russell Westbrook, he was great in the second half of the Houston season. He was great in the second half of the season for the Wizards. He was MVP level Russ. So I wouldn't put him as the worst contract ever. John Wall, Rudy Gobert and John Wall will be an argument. Who was the worst contract of all time? And I think Rudy Gobert will take the cake. And you've given up 5 first-round picks for this massive contract for a player you're not 100% sure fits your team. You're going to slide Karl Anthony Towns down to the 4. McDaniels now probably has to play more 3. Kyle Anderson more 3. So no, Tyler, I don't like this trade for Minnesota. At the time, I was more saying I'm not sure if it'll improve them just next season. How good will they be next year? Which I think they could still be all right next year, but as a total, terrible trade for the T-Wolves. Great trade for Utah. Next up, TK Makes Music says, why do you love the NBA? It's a great question, TK. So I'm from Australia, and I will fully admit the NBA has the best athletes in the world. It's been so normalized that these guys are 6'5" to 7 foot. They are ginormous, and they're so athletic, and they're so coordinated that they honestly do the most jaw-dropping things I've ever seen. On a daily basis, I just sit back and go, wow, these guys are incredible. We've normalized how crazy they are. But it's just the best game in the world. It's fast-paced. You can watch it every single day. And the discussions around the game, the sports debates, all that. It's the best game in the world for that. I love it, and I hope all you guys love it as well, because it really is the best game in the world. Next up, we have a question from Benja Mikarius. I hope I've said your name right, mate. Let me know if I haven't. But he asks a really, really good question. Which team is the most ready to trade for a star that isn't getting talked about? Or who's the most underrated chance to trade for, say, a Kevin Durant? And I think, mate, no one's talking about the Denver Nuggets. They have all their first round picks. They have Michael Porter Jr. and they have the ability to build a big three and pair another star with Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. So no one's really talking about them. You know, everyone's saying KD to Phoenix, AD to Miami. But I think Denver, mate, are the chances that are going to trade for a star that no one's talking about. So it's a great question, mate. Thank you for your question. Neech33, shout out to you. He's a great supporter of the channel. And Raman Marcel, I am Raman Marcel. Shout out to you guys. You both asked basically the same question, which was, where do I think KD will end up? And to be honest with you guys, it might be a bit boring, but I think he stays in Brooklyn. There's no real trade that works. You know, the only one that could have worked could have been Bam, and they can't do that because of Ben Simmons. The other thing is, KD loves ball. He's not going to cheat the game like your Ben Simmons and your James Harden, who will purposely get fat or sit out. He'll go out and hoop next year for the Nets if he's still on the team. Let's not get that confused. And I respect him for it. And the Nets will be sneaky good. You know, let's leave Kyrie out of the conversation. Seth Curry, Joe Harris, Nick Claxton, Patty Mills, TJ Warren, Ben Simmons, and KD. That's a top 4 seed in the East if they stay healthy next year. So I think the Nets could be sneaky good. I think KD stays on the Nets. And yeah. And our last question, Cade Zalmarano. I hope you've said your name right, mate. He's one question of the day. So shout out to you, Cade. He says, was Russ overhated last year, or was he to blame for the Lakers' poor season? So firstly, I want to say, Russ was terrible last year. He was terrible. The turnovers were bad. Finishing at the rim was bad. His midi, which in his prime years was deadly, is completely gone missing. He was terrible last year. He is not the biggest reason to blame for the Lakers' struggles. That is Rob Pelinka. 100%. Rob Pelinka constructed the worst fitting roster of all time. So after the Russell Westbrook trade, you've got Russ, LeBron, and Anthony Davis. Let's talk about who on the Lakers was put in a position to succeed. Talen Horton-Tucker. He gets overhated. He is a really good young player, but he needs the ball in his hands. He's really good with the ball in his hands, driving, creating plays. He didn't have the ball in his hands for the entire season. His first 2 games last year, THT, you know, let's not forget the end of season junk games where he put up 40. Last year against the Bucks and the Clippers, he put up 28 and 26 in his first 2 games. Then LeBron came back, and once you have Russ and LeBron, THT didn't have the ball and he scored 7 points. So that's the type of thing that THT, he can be really, really good, but he needs the ball in his hands. Melo, he started the season really hot last year, but he struggled. Melo is really good with the ball in his hands. He's really good making plays out of the post, you know? So those rosters didn't fit. And let's not even forget, they used the mid-level on Kendrick Nunn, who again needs the ball in his hands, over Alex Caruso. Like, let's forget about the talent for a second. Kendrick Nunn is great with the ball in his hands. Like, how many ball handlers can we have, Rob? Then he gets Dwight and DeAndre, who, forget age or anything like that, they don't fit. When you have Russ and LeBron, you can't have big clunky centers like that clogging the paint. That's not going to work. And then, you know, it's understandable, you know, guys like Kent Bazemore, Trevor Ariza, you know, we could say they're old, but I get him taking a shot on them and they just miss. But it was poorly constructed. Russ was not put in a position to succeed. And with the Russ trade, why would you trade for 34-year-old Russell Westbrook or 33-year-old Russell Westbrook thinking that he's going to change? Thinking like, oh, Russ will now become an off-ball player. Like, they got the player they were trading for. I'm not sure why he did the trade. Like, they got the player they were trading for. It wasn't Russ's fault. Rob Pelinka. For you guys that are now starting to watch multiple of my videos, you know I do not like him. Do not rate him as a basketball president. And to be honest, he's to blame for the Lakers' struggles last season. And we'll get on it, but he's to blame for our poor offseason this offseason. We're probably the biggest losers so far. So, yeah, Rob Pelinka. I'm not a big Rob Pelinka guy. But Cade, thank you for your question. You've won question of the day, mate. And yeah, shout out to everyone who sent me a question. That's going to be the end of the show, guys. Thank you for everyone for supporting. Hopefully, we get some off-season news, a KD trade, a Kyrie trade. But yeah, nothing's really happening right now. But thank you to everyone who's watched the video. Please like, subscribe, and thanks for watching.